Anybody that's with us. Just getting set up here. About to start our live for episode 150. Thanks anybody hopping on the call tonight. Jake Jackson of Waxing On with R&J to join us here. Tonight we're doing things a little bit differently. We decided for episode 150 we wanted to be advantageous with the timing of the new Turnstile album. Jake and I are both pretty big Turnstile fans. That's one thing, Jake, I would say that we bonded on early was the band Turnstile, I will say, like in our independent friendship. Big momentous day. Might be hearing a little noise in the background on my end. As we said, we're setting things up a little bit differently tonight. So episode 150 of ATI Podcast is going to be dedicated to Turnstile's new release. Never Enough drops a day. Big day in music. And I know we've been really excited for this day, Jake.
Absolutely.
You and I.
I knew that they, been working on a new record and they've been teasing some singles, and it's crazy to think that it's almost been 4 years since Glow On has been released, and a lot has happened for them as a band since, and they only keep ascending, and it's great to see.
Yeah, they're one of those bands that I think it's pretty evident if you've been following them over time that they've progressed as musicians. Kind of young guys in many respects, but also now. It was weird today. I was reading an article about Brennan, and they talked about Brennan Yates, the lead singer, and the fact that he was 35 now, and I was like, Jesus, I guess that's right. That doesn't seem right to me, but it was kind of surreal to see it on paper.
They've been a band for 15 years technically.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And so I would assume that some folks are at least tangentially aware of who they are if they're just turning in, but I never want to take that for granted. So in the event that you're just getting on the train of Turnstile, welcome. First and foremost, you get a lot of rich history to go back and listen to.
We welcome everybody, but yes, go back and listen to the catalog. It's very diverse, and it has somebody of all spectrums of rock, hardcore, punk, adjacent. It's truly one of the most eclectic catalogs in punk and hardcore, in my opinion.
And I started to hit on this point earlier, but they're a band, with each release that they've progressed with their sound. But there's always been that through line that they were just pushing the limits of just being a hardcore band in and of itself. I think it kind of started with things like production flares, if you will, and then then that matriculated and turned into and matured into things like implementing reggaeton beats and auxiliary percussion and Brennan's vocal melodies and how he would get a little bit more chantier and singier with his lyrics and vocal work over time, and some of the guitar works and effects and how that's progressed over time. So not only the obvious thing that any band does is over time they get better at their trades, if you will. They get more locked in, more focused, start to understand themselves better, their bandmates better. And largely this has been the lineup of this band the entire time as well, with the exception of the new guitarist that's officially a part of the band finally here, that's been working with them for the last 2+ years or so, the longtime friend of the band as well. So, you have that fluidity over time and that comfortability. It kind of allows you to progress and mature as a musician as well.
You watched the Zane Lowe interview that they put out this week, right?
Yeah.
Meg, the new guitar player, I did not realize that I was at I saw her first shows with Turnstile. I didn't know that the Blink shows were in Chicago, which I was at, was her opening weekend in playing with the band. So that was pretty cool that I was there to see her first shows with the band.
It's funny to hear them kind of go over the narrative of just everything that they experienced, it being their first big arena tour in and of itself, and just the learning experience that was. And I just feel like they're a band that doesn't project as if they don't know what they're doing. So it's pretty impressive, the fact that they're as seasoned as they are, but maybe they haven't had these bigger experiences. They're very DIY bootstraps. It's just really impressive to see just how they're already hitting it out of the park on the main stage. But, I'd say that there was a lot of cobblestones, if you will, set along timeline wise previously, things like doing the De Los Dos Muertes, that flare that the Deftones does, their Deftones, I think is what it's called, that, Turnstile played that back in, I believe, 2022. So that was kind of a big, I would say, gateway to a different audience for them, for example.
They opened for Suicide Boys as well at one point.
Yeah.
Loose did that in Code Horn, but Turnstile Turnstile was like the first band that, and they did Warped Tour in like the time and space era, so they definitely have branched out and done other things outside of the hardcore world. And to your point, we were talking about even on with Pressure to Succeed, which is amazing EP by the way. You could tell early on, okay, this is hard as shit, but there's great songs in here, and like they're on to something. Even early on, when I discovered them in the Nonstop Feeling era in like 2016, like okay, me and Blake were a good friend of the show, frequent guest on Waxing On. We would talk about and say this band is going to be huge, but in the most organic possible way, and it come to fruition. And I'm happy to see it.
We've got a question in the chat asking about Meg Mills, what bands that she was in before. So she's British, first and foremost. She's from London. Yep. And I know that she was played in 2 bands previous that Turnstile would play with all the time over in Britain. And I forget which the larger 2 of the bands that she was in that just broke up recently.
I cannot remember the life of me, but I know she was in other bands. That is Ian Seymour, good friend, friend of the show right there. Good question. Yeah. I'm not sure, but I know she was in other bands.
I literally just read what band she was in today as well, and I did not retain it for the life of me because I was just like, oh, I didn't realize she was actually in that band. But yeah, she's legit. She's got chops. She's a fucking excellent guitarist, really. I mean, I've been just thoroughly impressed with her performances, her stage presence, her ability to execute live. You know, you get trepidatious about these things whenever somebody adds a new member to the band. You worry that's going to affect the chemistry or how it's going to affect the music in the future. But the natural progression that they were on, I feel like she didn't impede that. In fact, she probably accentuated that.
Yeah.
In particular, after hearing "Never Enough" in its full glory, if you will.
Originally on the Blow On era, like their touring guitarist was the guy from Take Offense. That was the guy that was like playing for like the first year. So like I was kind of curious how they asked her to be in the band and what happened there. But yeah, no, she has done a great job, and it's awesome. She's awesome.
Yeah, so. I do recall the Zane Lowe interview that we had referenced earlier that they did for Apple. I guess he's kind of like an Apple preferred artist. Chubby and the Gang, Ridge. That's the band I was trying to remember earlier. Yeah, Chubby and the Gang. But yeah, she in that interview they kind of talked about too the fact that she was just like a homie for the longest time. Like over in Europe, they had this network of friends and stuff. So every time they went over, it was like her, the people that she was involved with over there. They just had a lot of like similar friends, similar circles. So it made it a natural fit in and of itself then too. But yeah, man, she's just really knocking it out of the park. I guess maybe we should kind of back things up here and talk about the fact that she didn't even really become an official member of the band, I believe, until they announced that just this year. I think it was April 1st, along with them announcing the fact that they would be having a new album coming out. So, like we mentioned earlier, she's been playing with them for a few years at this point. It just became officially official, I guess, as the kids say.
Yep. So, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but I did see the movie yesterday.
Yeah, so that's another thing that I want to bring up for sure is the fact that what's very unique about this release is, of course, they did the limited theatrical release. They had essentially a visual pairing with the music. I guess to layman's terms, folks who's never seen or experienced anything like that, you saw it, Jake, but if you've seen the music videos, they're excerpts from that film.
Yep.
But also, if you're a music fan and you've listened to bands or seen bands like Sigur Rós, for example, Sigur Rós did something similar, but it was more documentary hybrid, I would say. Back in, I believe it was 2007 or 8, they had the Heim DVD, which honestly, kind of some of the film treatments even and stuff kind of make me think of that. But just the artistic vision and execution, a lot of what they're doing with this reminded me of that. Again, I've only seen the music video pieces, but Jake, you can speak to the theatrical experience.
It was unbelievable. It was an audio visual masterpiece, and I wasn't high or under the influence of drugs. But I like it, and if I was gonna do drugs, this would have been the perfect time to do it. Let me tell you, 55 minutes of just like the mask when in Jim Carrey's Jaws just hitting the fucking floor.
Yep.
That's me. I'm like, this is on another fucking level. Like I don't know how they did this, but they did it. And kudos to Brendan and Pat, Pat guitar player,
right.
The whole thing. So that was pretty cool, and it was amazing.
I can't wait. I'm sure that there's going to be something beyond the limited theatrical release because an undertaking like that is, it's not cheap. for anybody that's been in a band and even tried to shoot a music video or anything like that. And the quality at which they did it, again, if you've seen those music videos, you're going to get a taste of as to what that is. So I would assume that this is probably going to get a physical release. I know these guys are big on physical stuff. I would assume that there's probably going to be at least a digital rental option to maximize, revenue opportunities for what money they put into this production. But as information becomes more available on that, we'll be rebroadcasting that, resharing that. But hardcore's become a funny thing too. I kind of want to set the table with this too, Jake, before we get in the weeds of the album itself, Never Enough. Of course, again, we mentioned it released today. Turnstile's been a band that has been, for whatever reason, hotly contested with their last few releases as to whether or not they're a hardcore band. And I just think it's ridiculous. I think that genres and subgenres are important for marketing and reference point aspects, but at the end of the day, sometimes I think we beat these things to death unnecessarily. It's very obvious in the DNA of this band what it is, and even just looking at it objectively, which I try to do with all music, everybody has their own personal tastes. Of course, Turnstile, again, if you've been following them over time, has always been a hardcore band. Just because they push the limits of what that genre is or what they are as musicians doesn't make them not a hardcore band. Just the same as, again, you could draw comparisons in other genres with other bands, how they've changed their sound over the time. I think everybody would characterize a band like Radiohead, for example, still as an indie rock band on some level, but they've had many sounds over the years, whether that's where they leaned into the electronic influence, but that you kind of see present day, but, more historical stuff. That first Pablo Honey album, some people would characterize as almost grungy. And then they have kind of indie rock singer-songwriter type stuff like the Bins. So at the end of the day, they are still a rock band of some sort with a lot of indie rock roots.
To your point, and this is a little band that's older, Genesis, would you
Yeah,
still consider them a progressive rock band? Because
absolutely.
they just the '80s they progressed. They were doing different stuff, but they to me Genesis, even though they had all the pop hits in the '80s,
Right.
are still a progressive rock band.
Yeah, and like we said, you could go through and pull up various, examples over time in various genres. You can go into the R&B field or the pop fields and pull people out where they've tried to push their limits and try other things as well. So I don't think that there's really any debate. Now, whether or not this brand of hardcore is for you is obviously subjective, and that might be up for debate. But, now we're talking personal taste and that sort of shit. So that is what it is. I'm not here to piss down your back and tell you it's right if this isn't for you. But if it is and you're open-minded and you want to, perhaps push the limits of what your musical tastes are, I think that particularly this latest effort from Turnstile might have a little bit for everybody. So
To the great Toby Morris of H2O, he posted every now and then, but hardcore does not have a blueprint. There's not one sound. There's not one style. There are so many different lanes of hardcore, and it's
for sure.
it's on my nerves that people think that hardcore's got to be one way.
Right.
And it's just like there are so many. That's what makes hardcore and punk great. Is that there's so many flavors. There's so many scenes in itself and styles that you can enjoy.
Sure.
And I enjoy them all.
Yeah.
So I like to say that from time to time.
Well, absolutely. And again, if you're looking at the history of hardcore, you've got some of those foundational bands, but like things that a lot of it was regional. You're talking the New York scene, you're talking the West Coast scene, you're talking the DC scene. Those are kind of the bigger linchpin areas in the genre. But as things progress through the '80s, there's other places that popped and bloomed. Florida had its own scene as well. Hardcore it has taken many shapes, and originally it was a lot geographically, but now with the advancements of technology, time has passed. These artists have infiltrated geographically all over, well, quite frankly, the globe. It's not just obviously a United States thing. I know Jake and I have gotten onto a channel recently. I forget the gentleman's name, but he does a great job with some hardcore history stuff. We actually, I took a look at some hardcore out of West Germany the other night that I didn't realize it was happening in the late '80s and, well, I guess technically early '80s, even into mid '80s, and then how those bands kind of would go on to even influence Americans or stateside bands or even UK hardcore bands and stuff. And, you don't know what you don't know, right? It's just a history lesson at the end of the day. But a lot of these things got locked regionally, distribution wise. So you think you know everything about hardcore, you think you know everything about any subject. I'm here to tell you, folks, there's always something that you can learn, even if it's something that's not necessarily for you. I think it's important to educate yourself and know the history of things.
And it's beautiful because it's the great thing about discovery, especially in hardcore. I can learn and find a new band and learn every day. I love that. I love that I can learn something new about something. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, or like this guy was in this band. This, just go down a rabbit hole. That's the great thing about music in general, but especially hardcore. I love that you can, you're always discovering. You're always finding new bands or finding older bands that are new to you. So that's what's cool to me.
I think we've done a pretty good job of laying the foundation because we definitely want to give a lot of time to the album specifically and talk about some highlights, some of our favorite moments. So this is fresh, and I don't know if some people might drop in on this conversation and think there's a bit of hyperbole or whatever, but I know that you and I listen to a lot of music. We take very seriously, if we get a recommendation from a friend, even if we don't think it's necessarily for us, we try to give it the time of the day, listen to it objectively, try to pick out
You got
approach things in a manner of which we try to find things that we like about something, if you will. It's not we're not here to shit on everything that we hear, because I know that my point of view, Jake, is, and I'm sure that you share in this, that I'm at the stage in my life that I just don't want to be miserable all the time, and I want to like spend my time on things that I enjoy and that I like. And if I'm going to give my time to something, I want to find something that I like in it. And it's, hey, if there isn't, you move on. But there's no reason to spend your life in a bunch of negative energy either.
Absolutely. And for example, you sent me a Bon Iver record, and that new record I love. And I would have never have listened to Bon Iver, but I know that, like, okay, Barrett sent me this, and he really likes it, so I'm going to give it a chance, and it was awesome. So that's just echoing in general music. Like, if you have a friend or know somebody that loves music and sends you something that they're really passionate about, and they have good taste, check it out, because you might fucking love it.
Absolutely.
So that, yeah.
Of course, again, the reason we're here tonight is to give some love to Turnstile's latest release, and that's Never Enough. And so Never Enough dropped today. It's 14 total songs, 45 minutes and 14 seconds. Turnstile did release, I think it was altogether technically it was four singles, but also they debuted two new songs earlier this week on Fallon tonight as well. So if you were like paying attention the entire time, you heard six different new songs, or you should have been at least somewhat familiar passingly. Of course, the title track was the first single, and that's the hit. Of course, I'm just saying that from an objective standpoint, and that is Never Enough. And so that was almost 5 minutes long. But I think right away with that first single, we all knew that they were pushing the boundaries of what they had been doing previously, but it wasn't anything out of character, because I saw even people jokingly in like some like fan review sites and stuff like that saying that this was Glow On Part 2, like essentially a continuation of what they did on Glow On, which I think there's an argument to be made for that. And they weren't saying that like negatively. They were just kind of characterizing their first impressions of the album. And I think that's a fair comment to make.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying Never Enough literally sounds like Mystery, the first track off of Glow On,
Yeah,
which
a
I
little bit.
continuation. I don't agree, like, with because there are some arrangements musically that is totally different. Like, there's a solo in Never Enough. There's the cool outro fade out. Like, Mystery didn't have either of those things. So,
Right.
like, I could see the comparison, but I just think it's more of a continuation, a part two, if you will.
Right. Now, I don't dedicate a lot of time to terrestrial radio personally, and I don't have satellite radio, so I can't really tell you what those markets are like and what's being pushed down people's throats as far as singles. We've got a question here asking if we think that the singles might get bigger.
Chance, because Glow On, I don't listen to rock radio, but I like to look at the mainstream rock
Yeah,
charts just to see what's in Glow On. There were either Mystery or Blackout did get played on the point, so I really do think Never Enough could have some songs also played on the point, which is great. That's why
absolutely. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that that could be the case. I mean, we could talk about songs like that. I think some of the most accessible song tracks that is on this album. I mean, Seeing Stars would be one that right away I would pull right out. It has elements of various things in that song, but it's got a little bit, with the guitars not being nearly as distorted. They got a little, delay reverb thing going on. But that's the track with Haley Williams in particular. So I could see that being a big single for them, especially once people get more hip to the fact that Haley Williams is involved on that song in particular. I mean, there's several tracks that I could pick out, but sometimes you can't tell these things, quite frankly. More specifically, the songs that were quote unquote singles and released before the album came out. Of course, we mentioned Never Enough. We of course mentioned Seeing Stars as well. Birds was at that point of those three songs being out was my favorite track, which
yeah.
I tend to lean the more hardcore punky traditional stuff with them, because I think they do that really well. It's not that I don't like the other stuff. It's just I think they do that well, and that's kind of what I'm listening for personally.
As a drummer, your drummer, I thought you probably also enjoyed the defang in the beginning, like with the cowbell. He's doing like the different like thing with the different percussion.
Yes.
I thought that was cool in the beginning of Birds. So
Yeah, and I do enjoy that. I mean, they do use a lot of auxiliary percussion tastefully in general, and again, it's been there in their music for some time, but they really went hard on it on Glow On, and it's as equally, if not more so, present on this album. Sometimes more subtly, and sometimes more in your face. And they just have a way of weaving that in there, though, that is very appropriate for when the time calls it. as well. So Birds was definitely my favorite at that point. When they released Look Out for Me, I really loved that track as well.
What a wild track! That's an epic. Like
But
a
yeah, when
song.
I saw that it was almost 7 minutes, I was shocked. So that was the fourth single. So I'm just trying to run through this timeline wise of the singles that released. I was like very surprised by where it went in the half of it to a degree. I wasn't again. I wasn't. They've always kind of implemented like things with synths and beats and things like that, drum machine type stuff occasionally. But yeah, it just goes like full like
Dan-
dance house
yeah,
type shit. Second half.
like not EDM, but dance
Yeah,
music. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, it's kind of EDM. The video too for that, amazing, man, just absolutely amazing.
In the film, it's one of my favorite parts of it was that is where he's in the car and like this is where like the before the outro starts and
Yes,
all the people rushing towards the car. I
right.
was like, fucking amazing. So that was really
And I
cool.
think that's another thing. If you're paying close attention with all the singles and in the videos, there is, at least in those, and you'd be able to speak to more so in the movie, and maybe we won't comment on that specifically, just in the event that it ruins anything. But there is some motif, and I haven't really been able to draw the exact reasoning why, but there's a bit of that in each of those songs' videos. Is there's like a manic nature of like I guess you would assume they're fans, so it's people rushing to or from something in all those videos or congregating in the case of Birds. I don't know if they're like, to me, immediately my first thoughts are things like, the old school Beatlemania and things of that
Yep.
nature. People are very passionate about Turnstile. I mean, if you've ever seen a Turnstile show, people are going bonkers, and rightfully so. I mean, that's hardcore. But they have a very passionate fan base as well. I mean, you're not going to go to a Turnstile show and not see some excitement and not see some crowd surfing and moshing, and it's not your ass beater shit, as the kids say per se, but it's people still passionate about the music.
The thing is that they can do that though.
Oh, they
They have
can.
back.
Yeah.
People forget Brendan Yates was played drums on one of the hardest hardcore records of all time. Big
Yeah.
Kiss Goodnight.
Yeah.
So this guy. I like to let people know that they're doing all this cool creative shit. But if they wanted to, they could break out some. There could be some karate type songs. If you know, like some. So
Absolutely, and they do have some songs like that in their early catalog as well, like we mentioned. So, and I'm here to tell you, there's some riffs like that on this album as well. So, then the next two that debuted on Fallon, I believe, was that I Care and Dole, Jake? Or am
absolutely.
I? Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I couldn't remember for sure, but when they played them together live, they run them together, and I thought, well, maybe they're going to be on the album together, which they're not. They're a few songs apart from each other, but they worked beautifully together, seamlessly, in the sense that like I had to like, wait, where's the second song? And I'm like, it says there's a second song. And I'm like, well, this just has to be two songs that run together. I really enjoyed the live performance that they did on Fallon. I could tell that they definitely had a hand in the artistic staging. They wore those old school head over the ear monitors, wireless monitors. They strategically were kind of laid out on the stage as well. So it was nice to see that they were able to bring that to, I think Fallon, I looked it up the other day just out of curiosity. I think he has the second biggest late night viewership, if not the third. And I'm pretty sure it is Colbert is one, and Kimmel might be right behind him, and Fallon actually might be third. So
Also, I wanted to ask you this because you and Ridge of Waxing On are a little bit older than me, and especially late night TV and play like rock bands playing late, and how important it was for bands to play late night TV. And think about how many bands did you discover watching late night TV?
there were several.
So like I thought that was like important. Like a lot of kids' lives could change this week
Sure.
seeing that. You know,
I
so
would say that like maybe the more it, and this just might be due to my memory, but the more impressionable stuff that I heard that sticks with me that I can remember and call and point out is things like Headbangers Ball. There had to be moments with late night TV. I know that there was moments that I was surprised to see some bands on stuff, but that was usually on like Conan O'Brien, for example. Like he was very good about having more fringe artists, but Dave would surprise you sometimes. Dave Letterman, which those two are my favorite late night hosts of all time, but it's neither here nor there. But yeah, Conan had At the Drive-In on, early on.
H2O.
H2O,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. We watched that replay the other
yeah.
night. Had Queens of the Stone Age on early. There's a lot of fantastic artists on O'Brien in particular. I mean, just countless with Block Party
I think he had
early in their career.
Slipknot. He had Slipknot early on, and like
Yeah,
imagine Slipknot on late night TV in 1999 or 2000. You'd be
it
like,
was '99 when he had him.
"Fuck
I'm pretty
this."
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. incredible stuff. So, yeah, I think this is an important thing, and we could point back to last year in particular as well. Whenever Knocked Loose with Poppy did the Jimmy Kimmel show,
which was
that was really big for them as
phenomenal, by the
well.
way.
And they had a big year. And Jake, I hate to say it, but we kind of hate to say we were right, but we kind of prophesied this. With our year-end episodes, we like to talk about where we think that music's going to go and what we see, and kind of characterize hardcore breaking through the glass ceiling last year, and talked about the trajectory of some of these bands at that time, at that wake, being led by Knocked Loose in particular, but Speed's on the heels of them. Bands like Kubla Khan, for example, are starting
Yeah,
to be, very, very popular. We've got bands like Drain now. This year is going to release a new album. We had theorized that Turnstile would, because they were due for one. And I had also, between our show and then, of course, my conversation with my friend Tyler Herrera at the Hardcore Dropout, we talked about the fact that Turnstile was next in line, and they're the band that might take the crown on quote unquote most popular hardcore band, whether that's you want to point to sales, social media impressions, that sort of stuff. I think we're early in the game, but we're about to see a big movement here with Turnstile. It is Turnstile summer.
absolutely. I want to say, like, they have, like, yeah, as of yesterday, I looked, they almost have 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify.
Well,
Now, I'm not saying that's the beat, but that's a lot of monthly listeners.
A lot for a hardcore band.
Yes, it is.
I wanted to take a moment to talk about. I mean, we could go track by track on this. To me, there's no skips on this album. Even Ceiling, it's like a transitional track. I mean, I enjoy that as well. Magic Man's a perfect closer, but let's talk about maybe Jake. I know you're probably gonna have a better recall at the top of your head about some of your favorite moments that wasn't released in advance. Like, so what are some of your favorite tracks, and do you have any reasons for those in particular?
Well, I'm going to go with 3 favorite tracks, and it's a block. I think it's in this. The album was released today. Our opinions about favorites are going to change, but as of right now, I really love the 3 track block of starting with track 5 with Light Design. Light Design is overall my favorite track. The dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun, the synth, like is that a clean guitar chord that it's like, damn, it has like that 80s almost like clean
Yeah.
reverb. I really love that riff. That song is just speaking to me, and it almost curious if it was to me. Is it like a sister song or like maybe a sequel to New Art Design off Blow On? The song's called Light Design.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's at least a homage to in nomenclature, and secondarily, there's some artistic notes and musical notes that do call back to that as well.
The Light Design, and then into Dull, and then to Sun Shower
Yes.
are my favorite tracks in a block right now. Those are like the ones that are really speaking to me at this moment.
Yeah, Light Design, I think, is one. You, Ridge, and I, your brother, of course, on Waxing On. Ridge is on the chat tonight. Shouts out to Ridge. But we all right away were like, Light Design's a fucking banger. I know that was one that we all gravitated towards immediately. Again, I go towards like the faster tracks. I also liked Slow Dive. Slow Dive, I think, that's the track I believe that kind of has the very Black Sabbath Sweet Leaf type riff to it. Bah, 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 bah. Like immediately I was like, "You are my sweet leaf."
Yeah, fed up or something,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
It's close to the tempo. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more speedier. But yeah, I lean towards those faster tracks. But Slow Dive, that was one thing that I picked out right away. That I was like, that's pretty incredible. Look Out for Me is really. I know it was one of those singles, but it is one that has grown on me more and more. Just I don't know. It just kind of caught me out of left field, like I mentioned earlier, especially where the turn that the second half of the track took, and then it just kind of rides out that EDM stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one's grown on me more. I will say that originally, and probably still, Seeing Stars is my quote unquote least favorite track, but it's still a great track. But it has grown on me so much more the more and more I've listened to it. And I think Ridge had made a mention that it kind of reminded him of like, or it might have been another track, Ridge. You can correct me in the comments if so, but it reminded you a bit of like kind of the '80s leaning Brit pop stuff, And I could see a little bit of that with the jangly guitar parts. It has a little bit of a flair of like the Police to it as well, and yeah, again, it's just like the guitar work is so tastefully done. Everything's so well mixed. And then I have to mention, I listened to this album, I think 5 times in completion. And, that's not considering, listening to the tracks in advance. And then I surprised with the vinyl showed up today. So I got the opportunity to listen to that before I had to go out to a dinner this evening. So that's why we're a little late tonight on our live stream. But I mean, it is amazing how well that this. I mean, I'm sure there's some intent mixing it to vinyl, but how well every performance shines through, whether it's in the digital application, streaming it in your car, or listening to it on vinyl. Like everybody's performances are very focused, and it's not muddied up with like an incredible amount of overlaying of guitars and stuff. Like the guitar work is, I guess, thin to a degree, and I did see some criticism out there online about that, but it's that way on purpose.
Yeah,
So
yes, I was.
and they're like executing their parts very well, and it's very nuanced. It's very well written. It is very tasteful. To me, I'll take that all day long. Other than laying, 3 and 4 guitar tracks down on something.
Yeah, and it's like Franz said, which potentially quote of the year. Franz in the Zane Lowe interview talk about the most swagged out, cool guy in music.
Absolutely.
Franz, he said this is the most sonically responsible record or whatever to date. And I'm like, that is fucking great, and I agree with that statement. Everything has breathes, it rooms, you can hear everything, and it's also clean, but it feels like you can tell there's human beings
Right.
playing it. The drums aren't edited to death, so
Right.
like. I love the production, in my opinion.
Yeah, the production is definitely a hallmark of the album. I know that these guys as musicians, as a band, and particularly Brennan, isn't somebody that's just going to sit back and let everybody push the dials and tell them what to do. I know they're very actively involved in the process, and it's whether it's you know by necessity in the early years, but they genuinely have a hunger and a thirst for knowledge, and I think it shines through in that Zane Lowe interview that we keep referring to in particular. I think that was the first time I've ever seen them all like actively interview as a band at one,
Yeah,
all at the same time. To see them all sit in a room and all of them talk and have something to
yeah,
say, it's kind of unusual for them.
yeah.
But
And
yeah,
Frank stole it. Like he has so much personality, and everybody was great.
right.
But he's awesome. When he does interviews, I'm watching every time.
Yeah, I would like to see him actually do more interviews out there because I think his personality is kind of, I don't want to say like mascot of the band, but he can definitely be like a PR face of the band even more so than what he is. And I think he like welcomes that type of, we'll say pressure. I don't know personally, but he seems to be very comfortable answering questions in the public eye, at
Yeah,
least.
I agree. Yeah,
You know, and he's what I loved about that interview too was hearing things about how whenever they went on that tour with Blink, he was watching this. He being Frankie Friends was watching the stage managers and like trying to learn from them and how they were adapting from show to show and how they were changing things for the next night, and every show wasn't necessarily the same, and why they did made certain choices that they made, and watched the stage hands themselves, like the engineers that were actually putting stuff together, and how they would mod stuff. And it was wild to hear. I mean, once you see it, it makes sense. But whenever they played that park in Baltimore, free show that they raised like almost $40,000 in donations for, I believe it was homeless
yep,
shelters in
yep,
the Baltimore area. They literally used the same facade from the music video "Birds" to make that stage that they played in the middle of the park in, which is also the same park that is in the middle of "Look Out for Me," where Brennan goes and drives into the middle
yep.
of the park. So I thought it was really cool how all that tied together. Again, haphazardly even paying attention, I caught on to all these things. So it was cool to hear that they still have that DIY spirits, because they're definitely getting into a stratosphere, if you will, that they don't have to do these things anymore. And the fact that Brennan and Pat are making all these directorial decisions and have this artistic vision for the visual piece of things, like everything's really coming together with them.
I totally agree. And like we said this last night, this is the perfect big rock band that people should be into. Like it's still DIY, grassroots. They still take out smaller and new and up and coming bands in the scene, but they're also massive. And this is the perfect mainstream. Because face it, they're a mainstream rock band at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Um, Not they're a hardcore band, but they're also a mainstream rock band. They are the perfect, in my opinion, band for the kids and younger people to latch onto. That's like this is the band. This is who you should be if you're gonna love a new big rock band. This is the best of the best, in my opinion.
I hate to say things like this without knocking on wood, because we've been disappointed by so many of our idols in recent years, but they're not a band that you hear stuff about. You're not,
Yeah, they're not.
hopefully,
No,
they're not
yeah,
getting me too left and right, and things of that ilk. So yeah, and they've been doing it for a while now. Like we said earlier, in their mid 30s. So I think if they would have done something really stupid, I mean, we're all human at the end of the day. We can make mistakes at any point in our lives, but I think if they'd done anything stupid or egregious at this point, it already come to light. But I mean, even their peers, you never hear anything negative about Turnstile.
Not once.
You know, hear about them big leaguing and Rockstar and everybody. They just seem to be like really humble, thirsty people, and just kind of quietly go about their business. And even if it's not for you, I think there's something to be said for that, and should be respected.
Absolutely.
Got some comments about the horns and dreaming, which that is something that we talked about in our group chat last night. I think Jakey joking called it their ska song, which I loved.
I love
Dreaming, another great track. I made this comment in passing too, and I know that if anybody's been watching our shows episodically and stuff, we've talked about on many occasions, touched on the fact that we've put a lot of more onus on album openers and album closers. And that is something that they knock out of the park here. We already kind of went more in detail with Never Enough, the title track opening up, how great of an opener that is. But I mentioned in passing how great of a closer Magic Man is as well. I think it's highly emotional. It ends on somewhat of a somber note, but it really captures the spirit and essence, and there's an ebb and flow from track to track. Mood wise, it's just a beautiful way to end this album.
I totally agree, and like it was like I can't wait for you to see the film, especially when Magic Man plays, and then I was like, that is a perfect closer. Never Enough is a perfect opener, and that's honestly how to sell a record to me. How good is your opener, and how good is your closer? How do you start and how do you finish?
Right.
Now, everything in between is important, but a great opener is and Never Enough just tells the story, opens you up to what's about to happen, and it feels like Magic Man is a not an ending, but it's just like this is where this has ended at the moment, or the ending of this story, of this chapter, or whatever.
As I was sitting and listening to it for the first playthrough, no skips, from start to finish last night when it dropped at 11 o'clock our time central, and I was listening to Magic Man, I was just trying to kind of close my eyes and visualize what comes to mind, things like that. I'm a big film buff and indie movie nerd, and my niches in particular, like sci-fi, horror, that type of stuff is typically what I lean toward, or like absurdist comedy type stuff. Magic Man, I had a little bit fun of just kind of visualizing, as you said, like you're on the precipice or the ending or the edge of like maybe like a universe or of something. So we'll say this body of work is their universe, and you're staring off into the unknown, and you don't necessarily know what's next. And I feel like it kind of conveys that feeling as a closing track, but you have a little moment to marinate in that, and as a lot of streamers do, if you're on a particular album and the album ends, it just starts it right back over. It was funny because, and I'm sure there's an intentionality to this, but there's I don't know if it's, I would assume, again, not seeing the movies, that might corroborate my theory here, but I believe it's supposed to be waves, maybe, that you're hearing as that kind of ambient noise subtly. If it's not that, it almost sounds akin to like when a record ends and it doesn't automatically kick off and you get a little bit of that fuzz noise, a low static. Um, and that is at the end of Magic Man, but that is also how things start with Never Enough.
Absolutely,
So
you're exactly right.
it loops right back around on the album, and it was such a beautiful thing to actually hear. I had to sit and write it out again another time straight through, just because there's like Freaky Frown said, this is the most sonically responsible thing that we did, and you could take that and paint it in many different directions, but that comment, but from the perspective that point sells to me, outside of we kind of characterized earlier, everybody kind of staying in their lane and know when to pop here, accentuate this, accentuate that, tastefully do this, whatever. Also, this band with intent laid out these tracks, and they take you on a musical journey, vibe wise, musically. That to me excites me as a fan, as a listener of any music genre. It doesn't matter. Whenever I can pick up on that right away, and a band, especially with 14 tracks, that's a difficult task to achieve. To perfectly place those tracks in an order that you're taking the listeners on a journey. It doesn't lose focus. While you might take your foot off the gas pedal in terms of intensity, it's still interesting in these other ways. Whether it's introspective ways, you've got these ambient moments, you've got these EDM moments. These guys are throwing a lot of shit at you, and it's sticking.
Absolutely. And speaking of the ambience, you about seeing stars, ceiling, kind of like the interlude before.
Yeah.
My favorite transition in the whole record is the ending of Ceiling to Seeing Stars. That is like chef's kiss right there.
It is. Yeah, that's another flawless transition from song to song. I know Rich made a comment earlier that Doll was perhaps his second favorite track, and Jake, you mentioned it in your block of songs that you liked as well. It is another great track as well. I'm here to tell you that there's no bad tracks on here. Not to sit here and just fillet the guys. Tried to give a moment that was perhaps my least favorite, but I still think it's good, and that's Seeing Stars. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about the album. It's super focused. It's a quick 45 minutes. Not that 45 minutes is long for an album either, in my opinion. But 14 tracks in 45 minutes. This thing's super focused. It flows well. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work, and I think it's going to stand the test of the time, much like Glow On already has and is. This is just standing on the shoulders of what they did with Glow On.
Perfect follow up to Glow On. Exactly what they what it. I'm not. I don't know what you. I love. I'll be a fan for life. They can do whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the perfect follow up.
What can we say that they have to do left with this record? I mean, of course, they need a tour on it.
Yeah.
Nothing's really been announced other than European stuff for them, which they're doing a lot of festivals over there and some dates. But I think we're going to get perhaps a fall announcement of the tour at some point, late fall, probably based on what their European schedule is supposed to be. I know I keep making this comment to you, Jake, in our friend chats and individual texts. Like, I can't not see these guys. I hope it happens for them. I'm not going to, bet my life on it or anything, but I can see these guys doing a Super Bowl halftime show and killing it, personally.
I think it would be great, but people would have to want rock music to be guitar-driven music,
right,
to get the the Super Bowl has a stigma for some reason against electric guitars being plugged in. I hate to sound like fucking Eddie Trunk right now, but it's true. They do not. Literally, Metallica. The Super Bowl's in what, San Francisco this year? Guess where Metallica's from? They're from the Bay Area. Wouldn't that be the best place for the biggest heavy metal hard rock band of all time to play? But they won't do it. It'll be some pop star, which is fine. I love pop music, but
right.
give a little bit of a variety.
Pop and
No
rap
variety.
has had its run for the last. I'm trying to even remember who the last rock band
Was
was.
it
I know. What's
was it the
that?
Peppers?
I don't. For some reason, I don't remember it being the Peppers, but I know some of the last ones I enjoyed was Springsteen, Tom Petty for Super Bowl halftimes. As far as rock artists, I know I'm missing some people. Prince, Ridge just mentioned Prince. Prince is my all-time favorite halftime show, but that's almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
But yes, no, I wish Turnstile would kill. People would be like I said, the mass jaw would be to the floor. They'll be like, this is the craziest shit we've ever seen, and I think it would go over very well. They would have to do it. They would have to. The Super Bowl would have to take a chance instead of doing the for sure thing at the moment, the hot thing.
We're just calling out Creed's Giving. Creed's Giving.
My favorite halftime shows as well.
So yeah, man, I would love to see these guys do Super Bowl halftime show. That's my own personal pipe dream. I'm not going to be wishing for Shakira and Jay Lopez. I'm sorry, buddy. that one's not for me. I want to circle back on a few of these questions before we wrap things up here too. So, got a question about how we enjoyed the album first listen. Did we rock it in the car, speaker, headphones, etc.? I listened with my Beats Solo over-the-ear headphones. Like those are perhaps the best quality sounding headphones I have that I own. I believe you and Ridge, when we were doing our listening party, both did headphones as well. Yeah, Ridge says he did headphones as well. What is that? What you did, Jake?
Headphones, and it depends on where I'm at and whatever I'm doing. Like, listening to it all through the phone is the worst.
Absolutely.
But like now, if I have a pre-order that came in on time, I will listen to it the day of on record first, and then. But usually headphones, and laying in bed and with the lights off, and just enjoying the record. So, yep.
Yeah, those moments of solace are my favorite times to do it, where you don't have any distractions. With it dropping at 11 o'clock last night, everybody in the house was asleep. I'm a dad, got 3 kids, wife, animals, always somebody making some noise in the house. So 11 o'clock, sometimes I get that peaceful window. So it was nice to just chill out on the couch with my shitty back and an ice pack on and some headphones and just relax and, just take it all in. And, I had the opportunity to listen to it 2 times through that way. Still went back and listened to a couple random tracks as I was getting ready for bed that I wanted to double up on, that, I thought I heard this here or there, or it reminded me of something, but I can't quite tell what it is. So I want to go back and listen to it, see if I can pick that out. I have a lot of those type of moments, but I listened to it all the way through this morning, first thing in the car when I was taking my kids to school and daycare and all that stuff. And then I just listened to it throughout the day as I was driving, got home, had the vinyl. I crammed in a listen before I took off to our dinner party that we had to get to. So yeah, man, gonna probably be rocking that vinyl every opportunity I get again this weekend. I was surprised it showed up. I got the. If anybody wants to know, I pre-ordered the Target exclusive just because I know it's a very basic bitch of me. But I've had some friends actually get some of the Target exclusives lately, and I've actually really liked their prints. And I thought this one was really cool. I'll take it out to kind of show everybody. This is called Red Wave Color. Um, I don't know exactly how many there are, but it is a pretty
That's
print.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's more of a purplish violet. I would say it has more of a purple hue to it, but now that I'm looking at it light, it's got a little bit more red in it. But yeah, it's really cool. I don't know what it is with Turnstile with these slip album jackets where all of them like slide in on the side. But I think every Turnstile album I have LP is like that.
Glow
And
glow on. My nonstop feeling does not. It's normal LP, but yeah, I ordered mine today. I ordered the cassette, CD, and vinyl because I'm curious to see how they all sound in each format.
right.
So, and you said that yours sounded good, right?
Oh, it sounds
Yeah,
incredible. The low end translates amazing. It's just so well mixed. And yeah, I just have some little cheap studio monitors that I use as my turntable monitors right now until I get a different setup going, which sounds great for what it is. But yeah, it sounds incredible. I got my daughter the cassette tape. It did not come in today, even though I got delivery confirmation it did. That's a problem to figure out later. But I ordered her the cassette. I wanted her to. She kind of in passing shows interest in music that I like and stuff. Right now, she's on a big Nirvana kick in particular.
that's awesome.
And she's been listening to Pavement as well. I got her some like ELO tapes. I caught her listening to those yesterday on her portable cassette player. So she likes a little bit of everything. Honestly, she'll like probably anything that I show her. I was doing a little bit of refresher on all the videos and stuff for this, and I was watching them, and I saw that she kind of took an interest in Never Enough in particular, and she sat down on the floor and watched the video the other night with me. So I kind of want to surprise her because I really think she'll enjoy it, and especially if she just kind of expressed an interest into me that she wants to learn how to play the drums and stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
she saw the Meg, the guitarist in the band, playing as well. So I think she's going to really gravitate towards them even more so. She starts to understand who's in the band and what their contributions are, and that there's more bands like that, with chicks in them in particular, kind of the girl empowerment type mindset stuff. So I think she's really going to enjoy it once she gets an opportunity. I blindly gave her friend of the show, former guest, Redemy. I gave her a cassette as a surprise, and she'd never heard of them or anything. She just knew that I was talking to some people in this in particular band, and that ended up being one of her favorite albums that she had on cassette. Some kid at school stole it from her, so I had to buy her another one.
Well, that's cool to see because it's cool to see that there are kids that are showing an interest in physical media. Because I'm, I feel like an old man. I'm only 28, but people get even like a few years younger than me. It's so short attention
Right.
span, 60-second reels, clips, TikTok. I'm not shitting on that if that's your jam, but it's cool that there's still younger people that are like, oh, I have a cassette tape I can hold on to and listen to and enjoy. I love that. Love to hear that.
We got one question about the album cover artwork too. What our thoughts are there? I mean, I don't have a strong opinion about it. Not that I'm saying that in a negative way. It's minimalistic. These guys kind of go for minimalistic stuff in general. If you look at Glow On, it's just a pink hue with some clouds. It's kind of pleasant looking. The remix album of that as well is just kind of a black and white version of it. This is just a rainbow. I think we can kind of draw some conclusions as to why they chose this as the album artwork. If you listen to the songs and some of the themes thematically, lyrically, and stuff. I think these guys are relatively positive, even if they talk about negative things that take place in their lives, Brennan in particular. With the lyrics, rainbows typically symbolize hope, new
Yeah.
beginnings, that sort of stuff. So I believe that's probably the intent of this, even though I haven't heard them
What
explicitly say that's the reason.
What did he say?
Um,
Post today. He said, I'm paraphrasing. He posted. Brendan made a Be Smooth on Instagram. Made a post that Never Enough was released today, where the world continues, or the world continues in the music. I don't know. It's something along that lines of what you were just talking about. How it's like the music. You'll put a picture of it in the
I
episode, but yeah,
will.
it refers to something on the lines of what you just said. So,
Very good.
and his Instagram. So
Yeah, I didn't see his post. Even though I've been somewhat on social media, it's been mostly just responding to messages and
yeah,
sending memes and hilarious shit about the hot breakup in Washington right now between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So
no longer tickle tank,
it,
huh? No longer
between
butt buddy.
their hot breakup and the amazing Tyrese Halliburton fucking another game winning shot that's been dominating my social media.
He signed with the Steelers today.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers signed with the Steelers yesterday, right?
Yeah, well, he officially made it official today,
I
but
got you.
it was announced
Yeah,
yesterday. Yes.
yeah. Be curious to see. Yeah, that was kind of dominating my time feed yesterday. everybody knows that I, in the past, have been a very big Aaron Rodgers fan. He was my favorite player for the longest time. And I've always been a Steelers fan. That's just something I've been raised on. It was one of those teams that kind of historical teams. It was my dad's favorite team when I was younger and stuff. I got a baby picture of me somewhere with me in a Steelers helmet. I'm not even 8 months old in there, like it's my little cradle. So always paying attention to what they're doing.
That is a hilarious comment, Ridge. Who gets custody of Joe Rogan? That's incredible. That's
Yeah,
fucking.
that meme popped me today for sure. That shit was hilarious. What was also funny about that, they had the fucking FBI director, Dev Patel, on there while that shit was going on, and he was like, I'm not making any comment about this. I'm staying out of it immediately. Like, he was just, there's just so many funny things from that today. But that's not what this episode's about. This episode's about
Never
Turnstile.
enough.
Never enough.
Also,
Wanted to give these guys some love.
episode
Um,
50.
Episode 150 for the ATI podcast. If you're watching this on the on-demand version, that's why the format looks a little bit differently. We decided to take to Instagram Live for an exclusive early look for those who tuned in. So we appreciate people who have joined the call this evening as we're winding things down here. If you're now just jumping on and you didn't catch the full conversation, we will have this conversation on demand. We'll have news about that on social media. When that drops, it'll take a few days. But yeah, this is our we're hopefully going to do some more of these Instagram lives. I know we've kind of tested the waters in the past, but I'd like to get back to doing some occasional live stuff. I like the interaction with the fans, answering questions, throwing that stuff in there too, because sometimes these questions generate good conversation points. And secondly, again, back to that comment we had earlier, we're all human. We make mistakes, we overlook things, and so sometimes these questions are good to get from the fan base to know what people are interested in, and may pick up on some things we overlook.
Absolutely. I agree.
Got a lot of exciting things in the works. I know that Waxing On's going to have some episodes dropping, perhaps some thematic stuff here in the future. So we're going to keep people abreast of those things as they develop, right, Jake?
Favorite album openers. It will be our next episode. We've already got it locked down in our collection that we own, physical collection. Not
Right.
our favorite openers because you can't buy everything at once. So just Ridge and I narrowed it down to what's in our collection, what we have. So that'll be episode 35, and then I think we were brainstorming about doing some thematic album closers. So just because the economy and times are tough right now, and I haven't been we have it as a collective have not been buying as we usually have. So,
Right.
and I think we're just going to kind of lean on some thematic stuff for a while that we have in our collection already.
The economy has not been so kind to the record collectors out
Yeah,
there. So yeah, we've scaled back the buying to this point in this year. I mean, I know I always say I'm going to cut back every year, but we legitimately, I myself in particular, have cut back this year. I think I've only bought like 4 or 5 records that have come out this year so far. And there's several more I want to get, but
yeah,
it's a matter of budgeting and being a responsible adult.
we got another great question, by the way, from
Yeah.
Ian Seymour. Any other music coming out soon or this year that we're interested in? And I've got a couple if
Well,
you got any. Drain, I will send Barrett a clip because Barrett and I are very big fans of Drain, who
yeah.
released an awesome LP on Epitaph in 2023, Living Proof. They're doing their follow up. I don't know if it's coming out this year, but they're working on a new record. And if you know this, if you've watched me, and it's one of my all time favorite bands, they keep fucking tickling the taint and edging you and teasing you. But hopefully, Good Charlotte puts out a new fucking record this year. Good Charlotte is the only thing potentially going to overtake Turnstile on the number one spot for me. So those are the two, Drain and Good Charlotte, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know for sure the one that I knew I would bring up, which Rich mentioned in the comments, is Converge. That's an all-time favorite band of mine. There's no question that I'm going to be tuned in, locked in for the new Converge album. We've heard excerpts of a new song live that they've played. They're a band that there's always something to enjoy watching and seeing the version of that song live. They kind of have that looseness and comfortability with each other where they kind of add some nuances sometimes live. Like, I feel like they're a band that never plays the song the same way twice live, even though they have the ability to do so. It's kind of, they just live out the moment, if you will. I know the new Sankastugabog I'm going to be tuning in for. That's, as far as the brand of kind of slammy type, death metal leaning type stuff that they do, they're the kings, in my opinion, and they're funny fucking guys. And
Absolutely.
they very much, lock in with their fan base and engage with their fan base. So I got a lot of respect for bands like that. I consider them to be of the best that do it, in their field as well. Rumors that there's new Deftones coming out this year too, which is like might be my favorite favorite band of all time. It's certainly in the conversation. So I'm about to see them. They're playing St. Louis in September. So that's a bucket list band. I'll be fucking stoked to finally get to see them. And obviously, if they're putting out a new album, that's going to be a appointment listening. I know they got a lot of stuff in the bucket and things have been written. So those are definitely, three bands that in particular come to my mind: Converge, Thanks Bug, and Deftones in particular. I know there's some other shit that I've got pre-saved that's dropping over the next few months as far as bands and new music. But yeah, those three for sure, regardless of me remembering another band or not, are definitely going to be toward the top regardless. So I think
Yeah.
that covers it on mine.
Announced yet. It's only June, so
Right.
there's going to be a lot of shit. Assuming that will be leaking out soon. That'll drop in November and October. Because
Right.
remember, our end of year list, there's always some crazy, great stuff that drops October, November, and even early December. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and I could mention Drain as well, but yeah, as Jake mentioned, we're both big fans of Drain. I'm excited to see they're another one of those bands on the heels of like the Speeds and all that, like Post Malone showing up to their shows and hanging out with those guys too. So Sammy's a fucking insane. I love Gulch. He was a great fucking drummer in that band.
yeah,
A band that I wish would come back. I think you will see them play some festivals and stuff randomly, but
they
they're done as
point. The demand is there.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, just a lot of good music to come. Stay tuned into what we got going on because we'll keep you all filled in on all of that as well. I'm sure that we're going to be getting some surprise music too that none of us are aware of. I know, we could even talk about bands that recently dropped albums as a surprise. If I know Jake and I both like this new Straight from the Path album as
Yo,
well. Highly recommend that one. It's a
yes,
fun time.
soon as well. And that's supposed to be their final record. And let me tell you something. If that's their final record, that's a perfect way to go out. And if you love Stray from the Path, you're gonna like this one. Pissed off,
Yeah,
groove, great lyrics. Craig Reynolds is one of the best drummers in music, in my opinion. And
I agree.
Will Putney is a genius. Everything he does is great. So production wise, so yes, the Straight from the Path record's amazing. Taylor Young, Will Yip, Will Putney, John Markson, all of those guys are like the kings to me
Yeah.
right now of
I,
production.
I should mention recent guests of the show too, real quickly as we wrap it up. Destiny's Mom. They just recorded with Taylor Young. I really, really, really love their album from 2023. I think it was like one of the most underrated albums. I kind of came to it late, like the following year. I didn't listen to it until then. They went on tour with Gel too. So last year before they broke up, and man, I'm really looking forward to what that combination is going to do because I feel like that's going to be a really sick possibility. I know Cosmic Joke has a new record coming out too. I forgot about them earlier. I'm really excited about that. They're kind of, if you like the Bad Religion type, like hardcore punk infused type stuff, I think that that band's for you if you like those things. So a lot of cool stuff
You
coming.
you just and by the way, one more quick. Let's hopefully we get it this year. Mike DeJean is producing it. Hopefully the new Agnostic Front record comes out this year too.
Oh
And
yeah,
and Vinny's releasing a country album as well, like a spaghetti western type. He's already
yeah.
put
It's
out.
it's kind of like a. I know you can characterize the spaghetti western stuff as an influence, but I think it's like a folk punk type
Yeah, for
thing
sure.
predominantly. And I think the guy from Go Go Bordello, the lead singer, is like co-wrote a bunch of songs, if not all of them. I can't remember how much his involvement is, but he's definitely involved. Vinny had shot him out in his post. The Outlaw, Vinny Stigma,
Yeah. Oh, he's the man.
legend.
Got hot sauce too that he's plugging. So
Yeah,
uh,
don't give me some of that fucking hot sauce. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Well, Jake, I think we did another one here tonight. Got the
cheers.
cocktails going. I got my whiskey and sweet tea.
I've got my high noons because I'm a big puss and I drink mostly high noons at this point in my life.
Hey,
So that's
hey man, no shame here. Get your
yep.
freak on, dog. But we appreciate everybody tuning in for episode 150, and we'll have all the links and the episode details on where to stay in touch with Waxing On, with R&J, or anything else across our network, the Manic Compression Group. We've, of course, got Ed Ozen over there, Brandon Stewart, doing Nomnard's Closet, and locking down the D&D world, the diorama making 40K Warhammer, and then he's kind of taken a bit more of a political awareness turn with the show, so a lot of good dark comedy, and, over there too, so if that's your bag, it might be worth checking out. A lot of activism, community outreach type stuff, moments as well. So he's got a new episode that'll be dropping soon. By the time you hear this, it'll have already been out too. He's gearing things up. Jake mentioned they're starting to lean into thematic episodes. Their next episode is going to be their favorite album openers from things that are in their catalog. I'm really looking forward to that. I know I've had a preview of some of your guys' selections, and I think you guys have got an amazing variety, some strong arguments, some great, I mean, nothing that I can argue against personally. On the list, and even though I might have some different selections for myself, that's the beautiful thing. You're going to get the variety with these guys, and a lot more exciting stuff. After this episode, I got to mention I'm going to be taking a little bit of time off, so there will be time between now episode 150 and 151 to kind of circle the wagons. We got a few exciting things we're working on behind the scenes, hoping to maybe get a network zine going. So we're just trying to get some other information. I know being a part of the hardcore scene and bands in the past, punk bands on the fringe, zines were always something that was in the community, and they've kind of gone away. There's been a push of them to start coming back in recent years. It's just kind of if nothing else, it's going to be a passion project for us just to say that we did it, and so I'll be looking forward to that as well.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining the call tonight. This has been episode 150. Take care.
All right.
Hello, this is Barrett from the ATI podcast, here to talk about the MANIC Compression Group. The various podcasts that make up the MANIC Compression Group include ATI Podcast, Waxing On with R&J, Nod Narb's Closet from Ed Ozen, and It's Just Two Movies. The MANIC Compression Group is a voice for the voiceless, a platform for those dream chasers. The various creative arms of the MANIC Compression Group all have one goal in mind, and that is to bring a spotlight to underground artists and amazing artistic works. ATI Podcast, hosted by yours truly, focuses in on interviewing rising artists, content creators, and small businesses. Waxing On with R&J, hosted by brothers Ridge and Jake Jackson, gives love to physical media. It promotes purchasing physical media as a means to support artists, album reviews, details on production and audio quality on various formats, all with the end goal in mind to give some love to some amazing artists. Outside of the physical media love, you're going to get reviews on recent concert viewing experiences as well as local show calendars. Nod Narb's Closet focuses in on miniature painting, the D&D world, role-play games, as well as various niches in the hobbies of 40k Warhammer, Dungeons & Dragons, and tabletop RPGs. Led by Brandon Stewart of Ed Ozen, Nod Narb's Closet brings attention to the many talented people involved in the hobby. It's Just Two Movies, hosted by Danny King in a rotating guest panel, covers just that, two movies. One critically acclaimed or favorably viewed, and a secondary movie probably not good, but the hope is that it is so bad that it's entertaining. Sit back, enjoy some libations to the velvety tones of Danny King and guests with an injection of jocularity and improv comedy. The MANIC Compression Group can be found across all podcasting platforms, but the full experience can always be enjoyed on YouTube. We thank you all. Stay safe out there.